Hello guys, I hope you're doing well. I am glad you are giving so much love to the videos. So, today we're going to talk about a day in a Roman camp before the fight. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy. The sky is still dark when the camp begins to stir. A thin blue-gray mist lies low across the fields like a breath held against the earth. It clings to the canvas of tents, wraps around cartwheels, and softens the edges of spear tips stacked upright in the morning dew. The air smells of cold iron, damp straw, and the faintest touch of smoke left smoldering in the fire pits overnight. One by one, men begin to wake, not all at once, not with any urgency, but as if moved by some ancient rhythm. The Roman camp has stood here for weeks now, each tent precisely placed, each pathway worn by 1,000 steps. Nothing is chaotic. Everything is where it ought to be. Soldiers sleep in rows, heads turned toward the tent walls, arms draped across their sides, or curled under their tunics. The ground beneath them is packed hard by repeated use, and the straw mats that serve as bedding have long since flattened to the texture of rough paper. There is no luxury, but there is familiarity, a kind of quiet understanding between soldier and soil, between fabric and flesh, between one breath and the next. One man rises before the rest. He does not speak. He does not stretch. He simply sits upright, as if summoned by something older than sound. His name is Marcus. His movements are methodical, honed not by habit alone, but by repetition beyond counting. He brushes straw from his arm, his hand moving slowly, deliberately. He pulls his cloak tighter over his shoulders, reaches for the leather sandals beside his blanket, and begins the day the way he has begun hundreds before. Outside, the world remains hushed. The sun has yet to rise, but its presence can be felt, in the way the air carries a whisper of change, a thinning of darkness, a softening of shadow. From a distant corner of the camp, a low murmur of voices begins, muffled and indistinct. A horse stamps once, shaking the sleep from its legs. The iron clink of harness against post rings faintly through the stillness. Marcus steps out into the lane between tents. His boots press down into the dirt, leaving half-formed impressions in the soft earth. Around him, the camp seems suspended in a moment between sleep and wakefulness. He nods to a fellow soldier passing by. Neither man speaks. They don't need to. There are no orders yet, no roll calls, no drills, only the slow, quiet coming to life of thousands of men, each bound by the same unspoken expectation. He walks toward the communal basin, where a few others have gathered, splashing cold water onto their faces, shaking off dreams not yet fully gone. The water is icy. It wakes the skin, but leaves the mind drifting still in the space between dreams and duty. The men dry their hands on their tunics, their movements slow, almost reverent. No one hurries. There is time. The first fire is rekindled near the cooking area. A cook leans over a shallow pit, coaxing embers back to life with practiced hands. Smoke begins to rise, soft, gray, and fragrant, with the memory of last night's meal. Iron pots are unhooked from leather straps and set to hang again. Grain, beans, bits of dried meat, all measured without measurement. By feel, by knowing. Marcus joins a small group near a low bench. They sit together in silence, sharing stale bread dipped into oil and watered wine. The meal is simple, colorless, and quiet. But in it lies comfort, not in the taste, but in the rhythm. The chewing is slow, the swallowing unhurried. The hands that pass pieces of bread do so with the tenderness of repetition. There is no rush. The sun begins to rise now, low and pale. Its light spills softly over the camp, turning tent canvas from gray to gold. It catches on the rims of helmets stacked neatly by the barracks, glints off spearheads resting in racks. Shadows lengthen and stretch, not sharp but gentle, pulled thin across the waking earth. The day is here, not with noise, not with fanfare, but with stillness. Further down the line, horses are being groomed. A young groom moves slowly along a bay mare's side, brushing her flank with long, even strokes. The horse sighs, its breath visible in the cool air, warm against the morning chill. Leather straps are checked, hooves are cleaned. The men working here speak only when needed, voices low and even. At the forge, a blacksmith begins his quiet labor. He lifts tools not with force, but with familiarity. He heats iron over coals that glow orange and red, adjusting straps and fittings, hammering with a rhythm not of noise, but of necessity. His movements are slow, his eyes focused, his breath steady. The tools are warmed by his hands, not merely by flame. Throughout the camp, soldiers tend to their gear. Shields are inspected for cracks. Armor is oiled and rubbed. Gladiator drawn and examined in the morning light. Their edges checked, their balance tested. There is no ceremony in this, only function. The men do not speak of battle. They do not boast or wonder aloud. Their work is quiet, interior, bound to tasks repeated so often, they have become acts of meditation. Marcus returns to his tent, where he kneels and begins preparing his own kit. His cloak is folded with care. His belt is laid out precisely. He oils his boots, then checks the stitching on his tunic. His fingers run over the leather grip of his sword, tracing the familiar ridges worn by use. He does not think of tomorrow, only of this. Outside, a few men gather near the training field. They move slowly through formations, not a full drill, just enough to feel their feet in step, to hold their shields with muscle memory. 1, 2, 3 turn, 1, 2, 3 hold. There are no shouts, no instructors barking commands, only the shuffle of sandals on dry soil, the brush of cloak against leg. The command tent remains closed for now. Inside, officers sit in silence over maps, lines drawn in charcoal, wax figures placed with deliberation. They speak in whispers, their faces calm, their gestures minimal. There is nothing to decide that has not already been decided. By midday, the camp is in full motion though. The motion is still soft. Men walk in pairs, or alone. Some sit on benches, sharpening knives, or sewing small tears in their tunics. One man feeds a pigeon from his palm. Another leans against a post, eyes closed, but not asleep. The sun is warm now. The sky has turned from pale gold to deep blue. In the shadows of tents, men write letters. On scraps of parchment, they inscribe careful lines, some to wives, some to mothers, some to no one in particular. The letters are not dramatic. They speak of weather, of food, of rest. They say only what needs saying. As the afternoon fades, the fires are rekindled. Stew simmers again. Bread is broken again. Wine is passed again. The rhythm continues. Near one fire, an old soldier tells a story. His voice is low, the words slow. A few men listen, a few smile. The story isn't important, only the sound of it. Marcus sits nearby, his eyes on the fire. The light flickers on his face, on the rim of his helmet, on the curve of his blade. He says little. He has said little all day, but his hands are steady. His breath is even. When darkness falls, the camp becomes quieter still. The wind picks up, moving gently through the rows of tents, rustling ropes and flaps. Somewhere, an owl calls. Somewhere else, someone hums a tune barely above a whisper. The stars come out, one by one. They hang low above the camp, ancient and familiar. No one speaks of the morning. No one asks what time they'll rise. It is understood that Marcus lies on his back once more. The earth beneath him is cold. The blanket is thin, but his body remembers the shape of it. His hands rest across his chest, his eyes close. The camp breathes slowly, and the night passes, quietly, like smoke into sky. The night deepens around the Roman camp. The fires die down one by one, their light retreating into embers. their smoke thinning into the black sky. A silence takes hold, not the silence of nothing, but the silence of everything sleeping. Boots lie neatly by the tent flaps, glady sheathed and quiet, beside folded cloaks. There is no snoring, only the faint breath of sleeping men. Even the horses stand still, their heads lowered, their tails swaying gently in rhythm with the wind. Overhead, the stars shine in sharp, unmoving silence. Cold and indifferent, they mirror the discipline below. No one stirs, except the watchman, one every few hundred paces. Standing like statues with cloaks wrapped tight, pilum in hand, eyes trained outward, beyond the line of torches that mark the outer wall. Their job is not to fight, not yet, but to listen, to feel the air for change, to watch the tree line, to be the ears of a camp at rest. In one tent near the center, a young soldier turns in his sleep, murmuring something incoherent. The man beside him stirs, but only to pull his blanket tighter. Sleep resumes, as it always does, in places like this, fragmented but inevitable. The ground is not soft, the air not warm, but sleep is as much about routine as it is about rest, and the routine here is as old as the army itself. The camp's perimeter is marked by sharpened stakes driven into packed earth, a wall of wooden teeth meant more for warning than war. Inside these lines, the camp is a clock, its components set to a schedule that never hurries. When morning comes, it will unfold itself again, hour by hour, like a scroll being read for the 1000th time. By the second hour of night, the wind changes. It comes now from the east, carrying with it the faint scent of dust and wild herbs crushed under hoofs. A horse stamps, a tent flap flickers, but no one moves. The guards adjust their weight from one foot to the other, not because they're alarmed, but because they've stood too long in one position. Their breath clouds in the air, rising like spirits into the sky, and then the horizon begins to brighten, not with color, not yet, but with shape. The line where land meets sky sharpens, becoming less dreamlike. Trees become outlines. The tops of tents become silhouettes. The cold grows sharper just before dawn, as if the earth itself is exhaling slowly. After a long night, one watchman rouses the next shift. There is no shouting. He speaks softly, a hand on a shoulder, a quiet nod. The next man rises, fastens his cloak, takes up his spear. The rhythm continues. Back in his tent, Marcus opens his eyes. He does not stretch. He does not sigh. He simply blinks, turns his head toward the dim light outside, and sits up. The blanket slides off his shoulders with a soft sound like parchment. The soil beneath him is cold, but expected. He rolls his shoulders once, then reaches for the cloth basin. Beside his pack, the water inside is nearly frozen, but he uses it anyway. A few splashes to the face, a handful through his hair. It wakes him, not like a bell, but like the slow tilt of dawn. He dries his face on the hem of his tunic and stands, pulling his belt tight. Outside, the air is crisper than the day before. The sky is streaked with pale lavender and gray, the sun not yet risen but surely coming. Marcus walks slowly down the line of tents, his boots crunching the frost-hardened earth. Others are waking too, rising in silence, performing the same ritual without needing instruction. The camp is stirring, not with fear, not with fervor, but with certainty. Everyone knows what today is. No one needs to say it. It hangs in the air, like breath on cold morning wind. Near the cooking fires, bread is warmed over coals. There's lentil porridge, watery and steaming, handed out in wooden bowls. The men eat quietly, some standing, some perched on overturned shields or buckets. A few murmur greetings, but no one lingers in conversation. They chew, they swallow, they wipe their mouths, and they move on to their tasks. Armor is polished again, though it was done yesterday. Shields are checked again, though they haven't moved. Swords are tested against whetstones, not because they've dulled, but because the ritual matters more than the edge. Marcus opens his pack and lays out each item on his blanket: his rations, his spare tunic, a small oilcloth, a string of bone tokens, a small wooden charm carved in the shape of Mercury. He stares at the charm for a long moment, then tucks it into a pocket sewn into his belt. It is worn smooth by thumb and time. He does not pray, but he holds it for a moment before letting go. Outside, officers begin making rounds. They say little, a nod here, a raised brow there. Their presence is enough. They walk slowly through the lanes, stepping around armor laid out for inspection, glancing into tents without entering. Their faces are unreadable. At the command tent, maps are once again unfurled. The morning light falls across wax seals and notched tokens, each representing a century or cohort. One officer leans over the layout, his finger following the curl of a river, then pausing over a low hill marked with a circle. Another nods, makes a mark with charcoal, then says nothing. There's nothing left to plan. In the outer sections of the camp, messengers begin to move, young, swift-footed auxiliaries, with satchels across their shoulders. They carry word to scouts, posted along the ridgeline, 2 cavalry tents near the rear, 2 engineers who've been preparing wooden ramps and carts. Each message is brief. Each response is a nod or a grunt. No one argues. No one delays. Marcus helps another soldier fasten his breastplate. The buckles are stiff, the leather cold. They speak no words. They adjust, tug, cinch, check. Then they switch places. The man helps Marcus fasten his own gear. They slap each other's shoulders once, lightly, then part. Horses are mounted, and lead toward the eastern rise, where a few scouts will depart in pairs to observe from the nearby hill. Their hoofbeats are dull on the frozen ground, barely echoing in the thin morning air. The rest of the cavalry remains behind, brushing their mounts, checking tack, adjusting saddle straps. The sun rises higher, now clear above the horizon. It is soft and colorless at first, casting pale gold over the field. But soon it brightens, sharpening shadows, glinting off polished helmets and spitty points. The mood does not change with the light. The men continue, as before, quiet, focused. Suspended. Marcus eats, again just a small square of dried meat and a crust of bread. He chews slowly, watching the fire across from him crackle low. A pot boils, unattended. A soldier scratches a note onto parchment, his letters careful and uneven. A game begins near the barracks, knucklebones tossed into the dust. The players moving slowly, placing small bets in the form of beads or buttons. No one laughs loudly. No one plays to win. They play to play. As midday approaches, drills begin, not to prepare for something unknown, but to remember what's already known. Formations are called, shields are lifted, swords drawn, step, turn, brace, hold, rest. The centurion overseeing them says little. His eyes move like a sculptor's hand, shaping the line with silence. The air grows warmer. The frost has vanished from the ground, replaced by dust kicked up by boots. The rhythm continues. Gather, march, eat, sharpen, polish, breathe. When the sun is highest, a bell sounds, not an alarm, just a reminder. Officers gather for final instructions. No one is surprised. Everything has already been said. The bell is just a ritual, like everything else. Marcus drinks water from his skin, wipes his face, and lays back for a while on his blanket. His helmet rests beside him, his sword still in its sheath. He watches a small cloud drift overhead, slow and ragged. It reminds him of nothing in particular. It simply passes. He closes his eyes. The air is heavy with mist as the first hints of light creep across the horizon. A dull gray dawn pushes back the night, brushing the edges of the Roman camp with a pale and colorless light. The world is hushed, still lying in that fragile space between darkness and activity. Thin tendrils of smoke curl up from the last embers of the watchfires, mingling with the low fog that drifts just above the damp earth. The scent of smoke, wet canvas, old leather, and dust floats gently on the air. Inside the camp, silence holds dominion, but not the silence of peace. It is the silence of many men lying awake, listening. The murmur of distant voices carries faintly, broken only by the soft clink of iron as a soldier stirs beneath his blanket, or the shuffling of a guard changing posts along the palisade. No one speaks loudly. No one moves quickly. It is the day before battle. The Roman camp has been awake long before the sky acknowledged morning. The sentries, chosen carefully for their sharp eyes and steady hands, had stood guard through the hours of darkness, pacing the perimeter wall with torches and short swords in hand, boots crunching softly against the gravel path just inside the ramparts. Now they pass their final rounds, checking the wooden watchtowers, looking out beyond the sharpened stakes of the ditch into the fog-blurred fields beyond. There, just barely visible, the shape of distant hills wait quiet, indifferent. Within, the camp's defenses, rows upon rows of leather tents, stand at attention like silent soldiers themselves, arranged with Roman precision. Every tent is identical in size, uniformly spaced, and aligned with the same military order that governs every other aspect of camp life. The canvas is stained and weathered from long weeks of use, patched here and there with scrap cloth, hardened with dust, and darkened by soot. Some tents are still closed, their inhabitants lying quietly, while others flap faintly in the early morning breeze, letting in the cool air. A single tent near the heart of the camp opens. The tent flap lifts slowly, and a legionary emerges. He is not yet armored. His face is unshaven, marked with sleep, and he moves slowly, without urgency. His name, perhaps, is Marcus, a common name, one of hundreds. He steps onto the trampled earth, stretches his back with a soft grunt, and walks to the edge of the street between tents. There is no rush. Today is not for fighting. Today is for readiness. He squats near a small pile of kindling and coals, left from the night's fire, and begins to stir the ashes. Around him, others do the same. Small figures emerge from the tents, one by one. Some are silent, others whisper. The fire catches slowly, a few sparks licking upward before fading again. He places dry twigs in the embers and cups his hands gently. To blow, a tiny flame flickers to life. Warmth follows. Across the camp, similar scenes unfold. Dozens of tiny fires spring up, their smoke curling into the morning mist like scattered incense. Men sit cross-legged beside them, warming hands, boiling water, chewing on dry barley bread from their rations. One soldier opens a cloth pouch and pulls out a pinch of dried figs, pressing them between his fingers before eating slowly, lost in thought. Another stares into the fire, unmoving eyes, reflecting the dance of flames. No one talks of the battle. Not yet. The camp is alive now, not with noise, but with rhythm. Boots scuff softly on the earth. Water splashes into tin bowls as soldiers wash their faces. A centurion moves through the rows, stopping here and there to check on his men. He speaks. Little. Just a nod, a glance, a hand on a shoulder. The men respond with similar quiet, a muttered "sir," a shift in posture, a returned nod. They all know what is coming, but the morning stretches out like an empty scroll. There is time beyond. The clustered tents, the camp animals are being fed. Mules snort as their handlers bring out sacks of grain. Harnesses are checked, hooves scraped clean. The slow, patient labor of preparation hums through the animal pens. A few of the younger auxiliaries are tasked with gathering wood. They walk out the eastern gate, their breath puffing in the chill air, carrying hatchets slung over shoulders. Their voices are low as they talk, or perhaps sing, but their song is carried off by the wind before it reaches the camp in the officers' quarters. The senior commanders are already awake. Their tents are larger, staked out in careful formation at the northern edge of the camp. A map lies spread across a folding wooden table. Wax seals mark key positions. A stylus has been laid beside it. No one speaks for long. Orders were already issued the night before. Today, they revise nothing. They simply wait. A jug of watered wine sits untouched beside a shallow bowl of olives. Dust motes spin in the air above it as the sun lifts slowly behind the clouds. The light changes. It is still dull, a gray that carries no warmth. But now the shadows inside the tents shift and stretch across the earth. Soldiers begin to gather in pairs and groups, pulling on their tunics and cleaning armor. Each piece of equipment is given attention. The gladius is wiped with a cloth. The scutum, the large rectangular shield, is checked for cracks. Bronze fittings are adjusted on leather straps. The lorica segmentata, the iconic banded armor, is polished slowly, each plate attended to with care. There is no rush. These are the movements of ritual, not urgency. Marcus, like the others, tends to his gear with the slow patience of a man cleaning not for show, but for readiness. He runs his hand along the wooden grip of his sword, wraps new cloth around the handle, and tests the edge with the pad of his thumb. A small nick in the blade catches his attention. He frowns, then files it down with a worn stone. Around him, others do the same, sharpening knives, checking Caligae sandals for wear, folding and refolding their red cloaks until they sit just right. The camp begins to smell of oil and leather, warmed by fire. The metallic temps of iron lingers. In the air, officers pass through the ranks, offering small comments, rarely more than a word or two. Discipline is not imposed today. It is expected, worn like a second skin. The murmurs that rise among the men are low, and even there is no laughter. Not today, and yet there is no dread in the air either. Only calm, only the familiar motions of preparation. The soldiers speak of home, quietly, or of past marches. One cleans his equipment, while humming a slow, wordless tune from his childhood. Another carves a simple shape into the handle of his dagger, a fish, or a star, or a letter. Not because it matters, but because it passes time. And so the day unfolds gently, as the sun climbs higher. Its light begins to fall across the camp in long, gentle rays. The fog that hung low in the morning begins to recede, lifting slowly like a curtain from a stage. The earth beneath the soldiers' feet remains damp and cool, but now the camp is fully awake. A low hum of quiet energy flows through the lanes. Of tents, a steady rhythm of preparation and reflection. No orders are shouted. There are no drums. It is not yet the time for spectacle. At the edge of the camp, near the eastern gate, a small group of soldiers gather at the well. The bucket creaks softly as it is lowered down, vanishing into darkness, then returns slowly, dripping and full. The water is ladled out carefully into clay cups. Each man waits his turn. There is no hurry. One washes his hands, then his face. Another splashes water on the nape of his neck, eyes closed, savoring the moment. The coolness is a small mercy. Nearby, an older veteran sits on a worn stool beside his tent, waiting a blade with the same motion he's used for decades. His eyes are half-lidded, the lines of age around them etched deep. He is not speaking, but others come to him. A younger soldier kneels beside him and asks a quiet question. The old man responds with a story, slow, deliberate, timeless. Something about a battle in Hispania. Something about a comrade now gone. The story isn't told to impress, nor to frighten. It's just memory, handed down like cloth passed from hand to hand. A short distance away, a camp cook stirs a large pot, hanging over a low fire. The scent of boiled grains and lentils drifts across the camp, mingling with the smoke. Soldiers line up patiently with wooden bowls and spoons, their eyes soft with thought. One by one, they receive their meal, plain, hot, nourishing. A few eat standing, a few squat near the fire. The quiet chewing, the occasional cough, the scraping of spoons. These become the sounds of the mid-morning hour. A priest, not one clad in robes, but a simple augur in a worn tunic walks slowly through the central path, murmuring a blessing. In his hand, he carries a small wooden box. Inside, dried laurel leaves, ash, and a feather. He stops now and then, sprinkling a pinch of powder at the base of a tent or drawing a small mark in the dirt. The soldiers nod to him, some touching their chest, others closing their eyes briefly. The gods are not forgotten on a day like this. At the edge of the training field inside the camp walls, two soldiers engage in slow, measured drills. Not sparring, exactly, just form. One holds a wooden sword, the other a shield, and they move, together like dancers, repeating familiar steps. Strike, block, turn, advance, retreat. Their breath is steady, their minds elsewhere. Each movement is a muscle memory, a song the body sings on its own. Others watch them from nearby logs, not in amusement, but with a kind of solemn appreciation. They too will go through the steps later, as midday nears. The camp becomes still again. The fires burn low, embers settling into ash. Some soldiers return to their tents and lie down, not to sleep, but to rest, to listen, to think. The canvas walls ripple faintly in the breeze. Inside, the soft rustle of fabric, the gentle shift of leather, the creak of wooden gear being adjusted and placed. One man lies on his back, staring up at the faint shadows moving across the tent roof. Another writes with a stylus on a scrap of wax tablet, his handwriting slow, careful. A letter to home, perhaps, or just a thought made solid dot in the commander's tent. Silence holds sway. The officers sit at a table, sharing a light meal, figs, cheese, bread. A jug of wine passes between them, each man sipping only enough to wet his throat. There is no boasting, no fiery speeches. They all know their roles. Maps lie folded nearby, orders already written, sealed with wax. The senior tribune gazes outward through the open tent flap, watching the light as it filters through the trees beyond the wall. His face is calm, but drawn. The burden of command is a quiet one, outside the tent. A scribe sits on a low stool, copying names into a leather-bound log. He writes without pause, eyes steady, lips moving slightly as he forms each name. Nearby, the camp standard stands in the ground, a tall pole crowned with gilded symbols of the Legion. It does not move, not even in the breeze. It stands still. Silent, the soul of the camp made visible. The animals are quiet now. The mules lie in straw, content, their gear removed. The horses have been watered and fed. Some soldiers sit near them, brushing coats, whispering to them as they work. One young legionary braids a bit of red cloth into his horse's mane. Not regulation, but no one stops him. It is a gesture, nothing more. A small thing to hold on to. As afternoon settles in, the mood shifts slightly. A centurion begins a roll call. His voice, though calm, carries clearly across the lane. Each name is answered with a word, a nod, a raised hand. There is no confusion. Every man is present. Every man accounted for. When the list is finished, the centurion dismisses them with a simple wave. No speech, no orders, just acknowledgement. They already know what is expected later. As shadows begin to stretch longer across the camp, the soldiers begin final preparations. Armor is laid out carefully, sandals retied, cloaks folded and packed, water skins filled. Every action has the air of ritual, like the winding of a clock. A few speak softly, not about tactics, not about the enemy, but about family, about harvests, about memories of home. The words are not meant to distract, but to ground, to remember what still exists beyond the camp wall. The sun begins to lower now, dipping behind the far trees, casting a golden hue across the tents. A warm light flickers across polished armor. The fires are lit again, this time more deliberately. Evening meals are simple: grains, beans, bread, A bit of dried meat, if the supply wagon was generous. Wine is passed, watered down, sipped slowly. Laughter is rare, but not absent. A single joke, muttered low, draws a few soft chuckles. Kind of release. A moment of light, and the quiet dot, and then the evening comes. Fully and finally. The sun is gone, and torches are lit along the walls. The scent of pitch and smoke thickens in the air. The gates are checked, closed, barred. The sentries are changed. A horn sounds, not loud, but deep, low, a signal of final rest. The camp exhales, slowly, in their tents. The soldiers lie down, not to sleep, not yet, just to rest. The sounds now are even softer. A whetstone against steel, a whisper, a prayer, a breath, and then silence. The night before battle has no great crescendo, no drumbeat, no call to arms. It is a slow, steady drift into stillness. The sky above, the camp is clear now, and the stars watch quietly, patient, unblinking. Tomorrow will come, but not yet. Tonight is for quiet. Tonight is for remembering. Tonight is for waiting. A soft wind begins to stir the edges of the camp, rustling through the leather tents and whispering across the open spaces between them. It moves gently at first, lifting small bits of dust and dried grass, then fades again like a breath slowly exhaled. Birds circle overhead, not many, just a few black shapes against a muted sky, watching from above. In the distance, the faintest cry of a hawk carries on the breeze, unnoticed by most below. Marcus finishes inspecting his gear and sets it down beside him in neat arrangement, the shield upright, sword sheathed and resting, helmet placed carefully on the ground beside, a small pile of folded cloth. He leans back slightly, resting on his hands, gazing toward the edge of the camp where the distant outlines of trees begin to emerge from the thinning mist. He watches, not for enemies, but simply because there is nothing else to do for the moment. Time moves slowly in the waiting hours around him. Others stretch or squat near the fires, their armor clinking faintly as they shift. A young soldier named Titus, perhaps not more than 19, reaches for a strip of dried meat from his ration bag. He chews quietly, eyes fixed on the ground, lips pressed tight together in thought. No one speaks to him. The older soldiers understand the weight of silence before a battle. It is not fear, always. Often it is simply reflection, or memory, or a need for stillness. Further down the row of tents, a group of veterans gather around a fire. They do not speak of what is to come. Instead, they speak of things long past, of fields in Latium, of vineyards once tended before the sword became their trade, of a river crossed many campaigns ago, and the way the moonlight had shimmered on its surface. Their voices are soft, almost like prayers murmured into the morning. A cook fire is lit at the center of camp, tended by 2 auxiliaries, with sleeves rolled and faces darkened by smoke. They stir a thick porridge in a wide iron pot, adding handfuls of lentils, crushed garlic, a pinch of salt. The smell drifts outward in slow waves, earthy and warm. Men pass by to collect bowls, offering tired thanks in return. It is not much, but it is nourishment, and ritual, and comfort. Marcus joins the quiet line for food, nodding briefly at the man in front of him. Neither speaks. He accepts his portion and sits cross-legged on the ground, steam rising from the bowl in his hands. The porridge is hot, thick, and slightly bland. He eats slowly, chewing without thinking, letting the warmth settle in his chest. The fire crackles nearby. The voices murmur around him. The world, for a time, feels far away. The camp's layout is designed with unyielding order. The main roads intersect at right angles, marked by the decumanus and cardo, the long east-west and north-south roads. Tents align like bricks in a wall, forming a grid of efficient habitability. At the very heart of the camp lies the praetorium, the command tent, flanked by administrative quarters, and a modest shrine to the gods. It is toward this sacred place that many soldiers now glance, some whispering quiet prayers to Mars, to Jupiter, to their household spirits. A few kneel briefly in the dirt, heads bowed, fingers tracing invisible symbols on their breastplates. The gods are not expected to intervene, but they are honored, respected, remembered. In the tent of the senior tribune, a small bronze statue of Fortuna rests beside a shallow bowl of ash and burnt offerings. The smoke still curls faintly, the scent of herbs and fat lingering in the air. By mid-morning, the camp begins to move with more deliberate motion. Equipment is gathered and sorted. Packs are secured. Weapons checked again, though they have already been checked twice. A list is read aloud by a centurion, names answered in short, sharp tones. There is no punishment for hesitation today, but no one hesitates. Duty has been worn into the bones of these men, like a well-used path across a field. Outside the camp, a small party of scouts returns. They walk slowly but with purpose, boots stained by mud and leaves clinging to their cloaks. One of them carries a scroll tucked beneath his arm, a brief report written hastily but clearly. He steps into the officer's tent and unrolls it on the map table. Words are exchanged in low tones. Fingers trace lines across the parchment and then over the painted map. No raised voices. Only planning. Only strategy. The legate, a man with graying temples and calm eyes, listens and nods. He does not issue new orders. He merely adjusts what was already set in motion. A hand is lifted. A runner is sent. Messages are delivered quietly across the camp. Small changes in position, reminders of timing. All are received with the same silent nods. The midday sun breaks through the clouds for the first time, casting long shadows across the rows of tents. The warmth is brief, fleeting, but it is enough to dry the morning damp from cloaks and lift the spirits of a few. A group of soldiers gathers near a barrel of water, washing their faces and arms. One of them, with a crude lyre slung across his shoulder, plucks at a string absently. The note hangs in the air for a moment, then fades. No song follows. A soft wind begins to stir the edges of the camp, rustling through the leather tents and whispering across the open spaces between them. It moves gently at first, lifting small bits of dust and dried grass, then fades again like a breath slowly exhaled. Birds circle overhead, not many, just a few black shapes against a muted sky, watching from above. In the distance, the faintest cry of a hawk carries on the breeze, unnoticed by most below. Marcus finishes inspecting his gear and sets it down beside him in neat arrangement, the shield upright, sword sheathed and resting, helmet placed carefully on the ground beside a small pile of folded cloth. He leans back slightly, resting on his hands, gazing toward the edge of the camp where the distant outlines of trees begin to emerge from the thinning mist. He watches, not for enemies, but simply because there is nothing else to do for the moment. Time moves slowly in the waiting hours around him. Others stretch or squat near the fires, their armor clinking faintly as they shift. A young soldier named Titus, perhaps not more than 19, reaches for a strip of dried meat from his ration bag. He chews quietly, eyes fixed on the ground, lips pressed tight together in thought. No one speaks to him. The older soldiers understand the weight of silence before a battle. It is not fear, always. Often it is simply reflection, or memory, or a need for stillness. Further down the row of tents, a group of veterans gather around a fire. They do not speak of what is to come. Instead, they speak of things long past, of fields in Latium, of vineyards once tended before the sword became their trade, of a river crossed many campaigns ago, and the way the moonlight had shimmered on its surface. Their voices are soft, almost like prayers murmured into the morning. A cook fire is lit at the center of camp, tended by 2 auxiliaries, with sleeves rolled and faces darkened by smoke. They stir a thick porridge in a wide iron pot, adding handfuls of lentils, crushed garlic, a pinch of salt. The smell drifts outward in slow waves, earthy and warm. Men pass by to collect bowls, offering tired thanks in return. It is not much, but it is nourishment, and ritual, and comfort. Marcus joins the quiet line for food, nodding briefly at the man in front of him. Neither speaks. He accepts his portion and sits cross-legged on the ground, steam rising from the bowl in his hands. The porridge is hot, thick, and slightly bland. He eats slowly, chewing without thinking, letting the warmth settle in his chest. The fire crackles nearby. The voices murmur around him. The world, for a time, feels far away. The camp's layout is designed with unyielding order. The main roads intersect at right angles, marked by the decumanous and Cardo. The long east-west and north-south roads. Tents align like bricks in a wall, forming a grid of efficient habitability. At the very heart of the camp lies the Praetorium, the command tent, flanked by administrative quarters and a modest shrine to the gods. It is toward this sacred place that many soldiers now glance, some whispering quiet prayers to Mars, to Jupiter, to their household spirits. A few kneel briefly in the dirt, heads bowed, fingers tracing invisible symbols on their breastplates. The gods are not expected to intervene, but they are honored, respected, remembered. In the tent of the senior tribune, a small bronze statue of Fortuna rests beside a shallow bowl of ash and burnt offerings. The smoke still curls faintly, the scent of herbs and fat lingering in the air. By mid-morning, the camp begins to move with more deliberate motion. Equipment is gathered and sorted. Packs are secured. Weapons checked again, though they have already been checked twice. A list is read aloud by a centurion, names answered, in short, sharp tones. There is no punishment for hesitation today, but no one hesitates. Duty has been worn into the bones of these men like a well-used path across a field. Outside the camp, a small party of scouts returns. They walk slowly, but with purpose, boots stained by mud and leaves clinging to their cloaks. One of them carries a scroll tucked beneath his arm, a brief report written hastily, but clearly. He steps into the officer's tent and unrolls it on the map table. Words are exchanged in low tones. Fingers trace lines across the parchment and then over the painted map. No raised voices, only planning, only strategy. The legate, a man with graying temples and calm eyes, listens and nods. He does not issue new orders. He merely adjusts what was already set in motion. A hand is lifted. A runner is sent. Messages are delivered quietly across the camp. Small changes in position, reminders of timing, all are received with the same silent nods. The midday sun breaks through the clouds for the first time, casting long shadows across the rows of tents. The warmth is brief, fleeting, but it is enough to dry the morning damp from cloaks and lift the spirits of a few. A group of soldiers gathers near a barrel of water, washing their faces and arms. One of them, with a crude lyre slung across his shoulder, plucks at a string absently. The note hangs in the air for a moment, then fades. No song follows. Nearby, an older soldier sharpens a blade. The whetstone rasps slowly across the iron edge, rhythm steady, practiced. He pauses occasionally to test the blade with his thumb, then resumes. He hums quietly to himself. Not a melody, but a simple repetition of tone, more breath than tune. The sound merges with the quiet of the camp. Others sit in silence. Some write on small wax tablets, letters meant for wives, for mothers, for no one. Words etched softly with wooden styluses, remembrances, apologies, hopes. The wax gleams under the soft light. A few scrolls are sealed with crude marks, or tiny pressed rings, to be handed to messengers if the sender does not return. A standard flutters near the center of camp, the red banner of the cohort, embroidered with its insignia, stiff with old dust and slightly faded by sun. Beneath it stands the signifer, gripping the pole with both hands, his head bowed. It is not a formal ceremony, but there is reverence in the way he holds the standard, in the quiet that surrounds him. This symbol, this pole, adorned with discs and bronze medallions, represents all they are, all they carry. Midday fades into early afternoon. Shadows shift again. The fires are banked. Some tents are tied closed. A brief rest before nightfall, before the last preparations. In one corner of the camp, an impromptu dice game forms. Small bones tossed onto a flat shield, coins clinking softly, quiet laughter stifled by the surrounding stillness. It is not about winning. It is about feeling something ordinary. A centurion walks slowly down the main road, eyes scanning, not in discipline, but in quiet reassurance. His voice is low as he speaks to those he passes. Not orders, but brief encouragement. A hand on a shoulder, a shared look, a familiarity formed by years under the same sky, beneath the same thread of death in the distance. The hills begin to change color, bronze giving way to purple, green turning to charcoal. The breeze grows stronger. Dust lifts again and settles on armor, on boots, in the folds of cloaks. The light takes on a golden hue, a soft glow that bathes the camp in temporary peace. At the edges of the camp, guards shift positions. Torches are lit, though the sun still lingers. Smoke curls skyward from the last cooking fires. A few men sing, softly, not a battle chant, but an old lullaby, half remembered, handed down from grandmothers and village knights. In the command tent, maps are folded. The legate and his officers stand quietly, hands behind backs, eyes fixed on nothing in particular. The time for action draws close, but it has not yet come. Stillness remains, like breath held in the lungs, like a candle burning low. And so the camp settles again into silence, a Roman camp before the fight, suspended in waiting, each heartbeat echoing in the quiet space between the living and what lies ahead. The hours stretch on in quiet repetition. The camp seems suspended in time, as if the turning of the world has paused for breath. Far beyond its earthen walls, hills roll gently into the horizon, golden with tall grasses that sway like ocean tides. No trumpet sounds, no hoofbeats break the air. Only the low rustle of cloaks, the slow creak of wood, and the occasional voice, subdued and warned. Marcus now walks the length of the eastern trench, not out of duty, but out of habit. His steps are slow, deliberate, boots brushing through the dust and small stones scattered along the path. He passes other men who nod as he goes, not greeting, merely acknowledging presence. Together, they exist in this hush of anticipation, a kind of collective dream. Beyond the trench, the land is still. No movement. No threat yet visible. By the supply carts, a few soldiers recheck the contents of leather pouches and linen sacks. Carefully, they count nails, oil flasks, spare thong ties. One sharpens a small knife, using a worn whetstone, the soft rasping sound barely louder than a breath. Another wraps linen around the haft of a spear, smoothing it with practiced fingers. There is no rush. The work is slow, thoughtful. More for the hands than the task itself. Preparation as meditation. Near the center of the camp, where the sacred fire burns in a stone-lined pit, a priest garbed in white robes trimmed with deep red kneels alone. He whispers invocations to the Lares and Pinides household gods that every soldier has brought in spirit from distant homes. He sprinkles wine into the flames, which hiss and flare in response. The scent of burning grape and laurel fills the air. A nearby soldier closes his eyes as if catching something sacred. On the wind. The camp remains orderly, meticulously so. Even in its stillness, it holds the structure of Roman discipline. Rows and ranks, tents and trenches, posts and boundaries, all aligned like the facets of a mechanism waiting to move. This design gives comfort to many, including Marcus, who now sits once more beside his shield, back against a short log, arms resting across his knees. He thinks of home, though he doesn't mean to. He sees the crooked olive tree behind his mother's house in Umbria, the sunlight through its gnarled branches, the cool stone of the kitchen wall, where he would lean as a boy, biting into figs warm from the tree, a stray dog that once followed him for a summer. All of it drifts past his mind like leaves in a current, nothing to hold, just passing images from another world. A distant clatter draws his attention, a horse, returning at a trot, guided by a young cavalryman with dark hair and a jaw dusted with stubble. The rider slides off, hands reins to a stable aide, and speaks briefly to a centurion near the northern watchpost. There is no alarm in his words, no urgency, just another message passed. Another quiet update in a morning that lingers long. In the far corner of the camp, beside the engineer's quarters, a small group of soldiers sits on the ground, playing a game with flat stones and a scratched wooden board. They wager scraps of bread or the promise of a future favor, small currency in a place where coin has little use. They don't laugh loudly, only smile, the kind that barely lifts the corners of the mouth. But for a few moments, they are not soldiers. They are simply men passing time. One man, older, graying and bent slightly at the shoulders, hums a tune as he watches the game unfold. No one knows the words. Perhaps he has forgotten them. Perhaps they never mattered. It is an old song, from an older time, rising softly above the sound of wind against canvas. The tune twists and drifts like smoke, caught briefly in the ears of those nearby before vanishing into the hush again. The sun dips slightly. It is not yet afternoon, but the light takes on a golden tone, that mellow, dusty hue that softens every edge. Shadows lengthen across the gravel paths. The air is warmer now, and many remove their helmets to let the breeze touch their hair. A few men doze, eyes closed, hands folded over their stomachs, legs stretched out toward the fire's warmth. In the distance, a standard flutters gently. One officer tends to his horse, a tall, amber-colored mare, with eyes as soft as wet clay. He runs a brush along her flank, slow and deliberate, murmuring to her as he works. The horse shifts but does not resist. She is used to the sound of his voice. Perhaps she, too, knows this quiet rhythm before the storm. He pauses, looks out past the camp's border, and then returns to his brushing. A small wooden altar is set up near the praetorium, not grand, but careful. A few offerings rest there, a bit of bread, a worn bronze coin, a carved figure no taller than a thumb, each object a story, each one placed with intention. The soldier approaches, kneels briefly, and places a sprig of rosemary beside the others. He does not linger, he does not speak. He turns and walks away. Still, the camp does not sleep. It waits. In the calm center of the camp, time has become soft and circular. The hours no longer pass in straight lines, but spiral inward, like smoke from the sacred fire. There is no schedule now, no call to form ranks or review maneuvers. There is only the low pulse of readiness, of quiet routines repeating. Boots scuff softly over dirt. Water sloshes gently in wooden ladles. Men hum, or sit in silence, or speak in slow, brief tones, letting words fall like stones into still water. Marcus shifts where he sits, rolling his shoulders, stretching his arms. The warmth of the midday sun touches the back of his neck. He looks around at the slow movement of the camp. Everything is deliberate. There is no waste. Even stillness seems useful. He watches a young auxiliary, barely grown, patching a small tear in the corner of his cloak. The boy bites the thread between his teeth, pulling it tight. His hands are clumsy, but determined. This patch will not last long, but it is a task, and that is enough. Elsewhere, a medicus checks his supplies, small leather rolls of herbs, salve stored in beeswax-sealed pots, strips of linen washed and He moves with care, counting not just what he has, but how far it might stretch. There is no panic in him, only practiced calm. He is not thinking of battles. He is thinking of tending to hands, of binding wounds, of easing pain in the hours that will follow whatever comes. At a distance, a small flock of birds takes flight, startled, perhaps, by a sound unheard by human ears. Their wings flash silver in the sun as they rise and vanish beyond the tree line. A few soldiers glance up, then look away again. Birds come and go. Signs mean what you give them. An older man with a scar across his temple sits near the fire pit, whittling a piece of olive wood. He carves slowly, not into anything in particular, just taking slivers off, letting curls of wood fall into the dust. His hands are steady. His eyes are far away. He hums, not a tune exactly, just a tone that rises and falls like breathing. Marcus rises at last. His legs are stiff from stillness. He stretches and walks toward the western edge of camp, passing the engineers arranging piles of timber, measuring lengths of cord, discussing angles and weights. Their tools are ancient and simple: levers, mallets, wedges, saws, but the precision in their talk is exact. They build as if they will live here forever, even if they'll be gone by tomorrow. He walks past the latrine trench, past the water buckets, past the quiet murmur of tents filled with resting men. He watches the light as it drapes over canvas, how it pools and folds, how it casts long shadows from the spear racks lined in perfect order. Even the shadows seem disciplined here. Near the armory, two officers converse softly about logistics, grain reserves, the location of the next well, how many horses will need shoeing by weeks, and their voices are low, their words crisp, but not hurried. The battle is not their present concern. This, the ordering of needs, the measure of small things, this is their labor now. The future will come as it will. From the nearby tent of the musicians, a low note sounds. One man tests his cornu, the curved brass horn, lifting it briefly to his lips. The sound is not a signal, not yet. It is just a sound, rich and deep, echoing slightly across the silent rows. It hangs for a long moment, then fades. Somewhere, someone laughs, not loudly. Just a single bark of amusement, perhaps at a joke, perhaps at memory. It floats up and dies. No one turns. Laughter, like birds, comes and goes. The sun begins its slow descent. The shadows stretch even longer now, weaving through the camp like fingers. Fires are rekindled in preparation for evening. Bread is passed around. Bowls of lentils, seasoned with garlic and herbs, are shared in pairs and small circles. The meals are simple, nourishing. There is no feasting. There is no celebration. Only the quiet gratitude of something warm in the belly and familiar at hand. Marcus eats with two others, a Gaul with a shaved head and a Syrian who speaks little but watches everything. They say little, just a few words exchanged. They chew slowly. The bread is coarse, but good. A single fig is passed between them, halved carefully with a dull knife as the sky turns golden. Then soft rose, then lavender. The camp prepares for the night. The sky darkens gently, layer by layer, until only the last glow of daylight clings to the western hills. Torches are lit in quiet succession, their flames swaying softly in the gathering dusk. The smoke rises in lazy coils, scented faintly with pine resin and damp ash. Shadows deepen between the tents, becoming broad and formless, blurring the lines between earth and canvas, between men and stillness. The camp does not fall silent all at once. It dims gradually, like a fire dying on its own terms. Footsteps grow fewer, voices lower. The scrape of bowls ceases. Only the firewood crackles now and then, a gentle, intermittent sound, like knuckles flexing in the cold. Wind stirs the leather flaps of the tents and flickers torchlight across sleeping faces. Marcus lies on his cloak, staring at the canvas above him. The fabric moves slightly with the wind, creaking where it meets the poles. Outside, the sentries have taken their places, stationed along the perimeter. cloaked in silence, leaning on spears, or standing with arms crossed, watching the tree line the hills, the emptiness beyond. Inside the tent, others sleep already, some curled against their packs, others lying flat, hands resting over their chest or tucked behind their heads. A few still murmur, voices low, indistinct, as if speaking only to the dark. One man sharpens his blade with slow, rhythmic strokes, not in fear, not in urgency, just for something to do, something that calms. The sound, stone over metal, becomes another lullaby in the hush of the camp. Some dream, others keep their eyes open, watching the shifting light from the tent flap or counting the beats of their own breath. Time becomes viscous. The night stretches out like an open plain. Outside, the stars appear one by one, scattered and pale, like ash spilled across velvet. The moon rises slow and round, washing the camp in silver. The torches dim beside it, their yellow glow retreating in the presence of colder light. An owl calls once, from somewhere deep in the trees. A second answers. Then silence again. Marcus exhales. His breath is slow and deep. He is not afraid. Not tonight. There is nothing to be done now, nothing left unprepared. The armor hangs by his side. The shield leans ready at the tent's edge. The gladius sleeps in its sheath. And so, he sleeps. And so the night deepens. The sounds of the camp have softened to near silence, save for the faint rustling of canvas in the breeze, and the slow, patient creak of leather as a soldier shifts in his sleep. Somewhere, a tent rope loosens slightly and taps a wooden stake with a gentle rhythm, like a heartbeat. The air is cooler now, filled with the smell of ash, earth, and wool. The warmth of the day has fully drained, leaving the camp bathed in soft blue-gray hues, lit only by fire embers and the moon's quiet watch. The sentries at the perimeter remain still, like statues. They do not speak. They know their task is not only to guard against danger, but to allow the others to rest, to keep the camp wrapped in peace, undisturbed. Their shadows stretch long behind them, merging with the outlines of shrubs, stones, and equipment piled neatly for morning readiness. They listen to the distant calls of nightbirds, the soft scurry of some small animal beneath the bramble, the far-off sigh of the trees. They do not answer. They simply watch. Inside the tents, the rhythm of sleep has settled over the men. Some breathe in slow, steady patterns, deep in slumber. Others drift near the edge, floating between dreams and awareness, half conscious of the sounds outside, yet unwilling to rise. The night wraps them all like a worn, familiar cloak. Marcus sleeps with one hand resting lightly on his scabbard, not from fear, but from habit. His dreams are hazy, filled with disconnected moments. The slope of a hill outside Capua, where he once herded goats as a child. The smell of his father's forge at dusk. The touch of cold rain in Gaul. The laughter of a woman whose face is blurred by time. He does not resist the dreams. He lets them pass like shadows in a stream. Nearby, a young soldier mutters in his sleep. His face twitches with the flicker of a dream, perhaps a memory, or a worry, or some imagined battle. No one wakes him. No one stirs. The camp accepts all dreams tonight, restless or calm, as part of its silence. In a far corner of the camp, the night cook tends to a low fire. He is an older man, grizzled and lean, who finds comfort in preparation. Though breakfast is still hours away, he begins soaking lentils, measuring grain, setting water to heat in a small copper pot. His movements are deliberate, almost ceremonial. He hums softly under his breath, a tune with no words, passed down through years of habit and repetition. From time to time, he glances toward the eastern sky, where the black of night is absolute. But he knows that somewhere beyond that darkness, the first pale line of dawn is quietly gathering strength. The minutes pass, slow and thick. Time, in the heart of the camp, has no urgency. Elsewhere, a horse stirs in its sleep, exhaling through flared nostrils, its hooves shifting lightly on the straw. The stable master murmurs softly to calm it, though the animal has already settled. Even in the darkness, the bond between man and beast is clear, built over days of travel, sweat, and trust. Not far from the stable, a standard-bearer sleeps, curled beside his pole and banner. The cloth is wrapped carefully to protect it from dew, and the eagle at its top is draped in linen. Even now, at rest, it holds its place, a quiet symbol of order, of Rome, of something greater than any single man asleep beneath it. And, in the open, under the clear dome of stars, a pair of scouts return from the outer woods. They move silently between the shadows, their feet sure, their eyes sharp. One gestures to the sentry at the edge of the camp. No words are needed. A brief nod is exchanged, and the scouts disappear into the shadows of the command tents. There, report to be given quietly to a waiting officer. Nothing urgent, nothing unexpected, just movement in the trees. Perhaps deer, perhaps nothing. The forest watches, as it always does. Inside the tents, men turn in their sleep. A knee shifts, a cloak is pulled tighter. Someone snores once, then falls silent. The firewood hisses as it burns down to coals, and the moon begins its descent, tracing a slow arc down the western sky, its light gradually softening from silver to gray dot. At the center of the camp, the fire in the praetor's tent has burned low. The general lies asleep on his cot, fully dressed but relaxed, his face smooth and calm. Scrolls lie beside him, maps, messages, orders, now ignored. He has done what he can. The day ahead will write its own tale. In this quiet hour, when the world feels furthest from the sun, the camp breathes as one great body still, slow, waiting, and gradually, without fanfare or sound, the first light of dawn begins to press against the eastern rim of the sky, not yet visible, but present. The stars seem to pale. The coolness in the air grows sharper, as if the world itself is holding its breath. One sentry shifts slightly. He does not speak, but he feels it, the change, the approach. And somewhere, deep in the camp, a bird calls out. Just once, morning is coming. The change is almost imperceptible at first. A faint silver seeps into the eastern sky, not yet the sun itself, but the whisper of its approach. The stars, once so vivid, now flicker with gentler light, as if preparing to bow out. A thin, low mist begins to stretch itself along the earth, winding between tent poles and bedrolls like a soft river of cloud. One by one, the birds resume their songs. Short, uncertain chirps at first, like scouts checking the edge of silence. Then, gradually, a fuller chorus awakens in the trees beyond the camp. Warblers, thrushes, and doves their calls, overlapping and weaving together with the rhythm of dawn. In the Roman camp, movement begins as a murmur, a cough from within a tent, the clink of a belt buckle, a voice muttering low in sleep. Boots scrape faintly against earth as men begin to stir, stretching limbs sore from the ground. A soldier, eyes puffy with sleep, emerges from his tent and lifts his arms wide, arching his back toward the pale sky. His breath clouds in the cool morning air. Behind him, others do the same, each in their own quiet bubble of waking. The rituals of morning honed by months of repetition. There is no trumpet, no shout, no barked command. The camp awakens slowly, organically, like a forest greeting the sun. In the mess area, the cook's fire is already flickering with new life. He has coaxed the embers back into flame, and small pots of grain simmer quietly over the heat. The scent of barley and garlic begins to rise, mingling with the crisp scent of dew in earth. He ladles out portions carefully into worn wooden bowls, setting them out on long planks for the first arrivals. The first soldiers approach with bleary eyes and soft nods of gratitude. They eat in silence, grateful for the warmth. The food is simple, thick, bland. sustaining, but it fills the belly and soothes the cold as the light grows stronger. The silhouettes of the camp become more defined. Rows of tents stretch out in orderly lines, their edges now gleaming faintly with dew. Leather armor hangs from wooden racks, catching the morning glow in soft amber tones. Shields lean in tidy stacks, some painted, others plain, all worn smooth. At the edges from use. One officer walks the central path of the camp, hands behind his back, his boots leaving dark prints in the damp earth. He checks the perimeter, nods to the sentries, and pauses by the corral to study the horses. They too are waking, ears twitching, tails flicking, muscles shifting under blankets. The stable master offers them grain and brushes their flanks with long practiced strokes. From the command tent, the general steps out, cloaked in a thick woolen mantle. His hair is still unkempt, and his eyes squint slightly at the light, but he walks with purpose. A junior officer hands him a scroll, a final report, perhaps, and they speak briefly, barely above a whisper. The general nods, then looks toward the eastern hills, where the sun will soon crest. There is no sense of urgency. The army does not rush. Each action is calm, deliberate, rehearsed through countless mornings like this. Swords are unwrapped and inspected. Helmets are wiped clean with bits of cloth. Waterskins are topped off. Arrows are counted. Packs are adjusted. The rustle of preparation hums softly through the camp like the tuning of an orchestra. Not far from the main road, soldiers polish their sandals, cracking jokes in low voices about how the mud will undo their work within the hour. Another sits on an overturned bucket, threading a loose strap through the buckle of his cuirass, humming the same tavern tune he always does when nerves threaten to rise. A young recruit sits cross-legged near the edge of the camp, quietly sharpening his gladius with small, focused strokes. He says nothing, but his eyes flick often toward the hills. Today will be his first real engagement. His hands are steady, but his shoulders are tense. Beside him, a veteran kneels to wrap his own boots, glancing occasionally at the boy. He says nothing either. Words are rarely useful in this moment. Presence is enough. The standard bearer uncovers the eagle. With slow, reverent motions, he unwraps the linen shroud that has protected the golden symbol through the night. The eagle glints in the new light, catching a sliver of sunlight and casting it briefly onto the ground below. A few men nearby pause and bow their heads. By now the sky is brightening in earnest. A pale gold rim presses up from the horizon, melting away the last blue of night. Shadows stretch long across the camp, and the breath of the men turns from mist to air. The world is warming, awakening, preparing. The general walks the length of the camp, stopping to exchange short words with centurions. No speeches are made, no calls to glory. That came yesterday. Today is for clarity, for readiness. Near the engineer's tent, carts are checked and supplies tied down. The smith gives final taps to a bent spearhead. Medics review their kits, preparing cloth and water for wounds that have not yet been made. A priest murmurs a quiet prayer near a makeshift altar, his hand lifted toward the lightning sky. Time moves steadily forward. The scouts return again, this time with fresh news. A dust trail in the distance. Movement near the opposing ridge. The enemy has stirred as well. Still, the Roman camp does not rush. Discipline, order, rhythm, these are the tools of Rome. Formations begin to gather now. Lines are forming. Men find their place not by command, but by muscle memory. The same spot, the same position as every drill before. The maniples stand row by row, shields to the left, swords at the hip, eyes forward. Not all faces are calm, but all are steady. They are Romans, trained, hardened, ready. The general steps forward, one final time. He raises his right hand and lets it fall. The horn sounds. It is not a loud blast, not a war cry, but a low, long tone that hums through the morning air like a distant wave. It echoes gently against the hills, curling through the trees, announcing not fury, but inevitability. The Legion moves, and yet, amid all this, amid the tension, the purpose, the preparation, there remains something deeply peaceful. For in this moment, the men are fully present. Not thinking of yesterday, not of home, not even of victory, only of this hour, this ground, this breath. And as the first full light of morning spills over the ridges, casting long shadows behind the men of Rome, a stillness settles over the land, for this is the moment before the clash, the breath before the roar, the still morning in a Roman camp before the fight. The hills that had once cradled the morning light now stand shrouded in rising dust. The clash, when it came, unfolded not like the thunder of a sudden storm, but like the deep, rolling waves of the sea, pulsing, ebbing, swelling. The rhythms of discipline and repetition guided the Roman lines as they advanced, shields locked, sandals pressing firmly into the earth. There is no need to describe the violence in detail. That is not what remains. What stays with a man is not the edge of the blade, but the feel of the ground beneath him, the breath of the man beside him, the way the sun glints off a helmet and blinds him for a second. It is the heaviness in the arms, the roar in the ears, the silence that follows, and now, that silence is here. It arrives like a hush over a great cathedral, descending slowly, quietly, as if even the wind dares not disturb it. The battlefield lies behind them. Some soldiers return with small wounds, scratches on arms, bruises on ribs. Their faces are streaked with sweat, not all of it their own. Their legs move stiffly, but with a kind of purpose, as if by walking back into camp, they are stitching themselves back into the fabric of life. Others are carried. Stretchers creak softly under their weight, borne by comrades who murmur to them, not words of comfort, but simple, grounding phrases. Almost there. You did well. Hold on. In the medical tent, the air is thick with the scent of boiled cloth, blood, and crushed herbs. The medics work in a focused silence, their hands moving with steady precision. A bowl of water is replaced, a fresh bandage pressed, a cup of diluted wine lifted to trembling lips, and outside, the camp breathes. It does not cheer, it does not mourn, it exists, for now, in a state of profound stillness, near a row of tents. Two soldiers sit with their backs to the canvas, neither speaking. One holds a wet stone, and slowly draws it along the blade of his gladius, though the edge is already clean. The other simply watches the horizon. The sun has begun its descent now, casting long shadows that reach toward the eastern hills, the very hills that bore the first light this morning, in the center of camp. The eagle stands again on its pole, wrapped once more in its linen shroud. The standard-bearer has cleaned the gold carefully, wiping it free of dust and grime, as if preserving not the symbol, but the silence that now surrounds it. A few men gather near the fire, not to eat, but simply to be near one another. They pass, a waterskin back and forth. One begins a story, stops, then chuckles softly, the sound almost startling in the quiet. The others smile, but say nothing. The general is not seen. He is in his tent, perhaps, reading reports by lamplight, or dictating letters. Or perhaps he, too, walks alone at the edge of camp, letting the last breeze of day cool the back of his neck, and above, the sky slowly deepens. Soft blues melt into dusty rose. Then, gradually, the faintest violet. The stars begin their slow return, not rushed, not urgent, simply appearing as they always do, one by one, without demand or ceremony. A trumpet sounds, once not the call to arms, but the signal for rest. Men begin to retreat to their tents. Armor is unbuckled, sandals are unlaced, blades are wiped down and sheathed, cloths are pressed to bruises. A few letters are written home, the ink trailing off at the edges where weariness overtakes the hand and the quieter corners of camp. Some pray, not loudly, not desperately, but with soft reverence. They do not ask for victory, they ask for return, for safe passage through the days to come. For morning dot and the firelight glows gently across their bowed heads. The night deepens, the camp settles, and in one of the tents, small, plain, no different from the rest, a young soldier lies on his side, his blanket pulled to his chin, his eyes open to the dark canvas above. He does not sleep yet. He listens to the wind, the soft murmur of distant voices, the creak of leather, the far-off sound of a horse snorting. All of it familiar now. He thinks of his family, of course, but not clearly, not in words or images. More like a feeling that settles over him, a memory of warmth, of a fire at home, of bread baking, of his mother's voice humming, somewhere in another room. Then, he closes his eyes, and slowly, sleep takes him. The stars are at their brightest now. Above the Roman camp, the sky stretches like a deep, endless sea, a canvas of soft indigo, punctuated by steady points of light that shimmer faintly as if breathing with the earth below. There is no moon tonight, only the cool hush of night and the gentle rhythm of crickets far beyond the camp's wooden palisades. A soft wind stirs the edges of the tents. It rustles the flaps, rattles the leather ties, and rolls lazily across the sanded earth, brushing past sleeping faces and cooling the last embers of the cooking fires. Here and there, the silhouette of a sentry stands still against the night. Cloaked in shadows, they lean on spears, wrapped in woolen cloaks, their eyes scanning the horizon more from habit than fear. The battle is behind them. What remains now is recovery and silence in the makeshift infirmary. The low light of oil lamps casts a golden hush over resting men. A medic dozes upright in a wooden chair, his hands still stained from the day's efforts. Bandages soak in clay bowls, and linen sheets rise and fall with the slow breath of the wounded. The scent of rosemary and honey lingers in the warm air, soft, comforting, familiar. A small dog, likely a camp stray, curls at the edge of one man's cot. It shifts once in sleep, sighs softly, and presses its nose against the soldier's side. Outside, the world holds still. The fires have dimmed. Two glowing coals, casting halos of orange across nearby tent walls. A soldier, unable to sleep, walks slowly around the camp perimeter. His hands are clasped behind his back, his steps slow, his eyes drawn upward toward the stars. He is not anxious. He is not restless. He is simply awake, and in this moment, grateful to be so. He pauses at the edge of the camp, where the land begins to slope downward, toward the river valley. There, he breathes deeply once, then again. The air is cool and clean. There is something ancient in it, something older than the camp, older than Rome itself. Perhaps he thinks of the river, of how it will shimmer in the early light, of how the water will run cold when he dips his hands in it, washing away the dust of the day before. Perhaps he thinks of home, not the place, but the idea. A doorway, a table, a quiet voice calling from the other room. Eventually, he turns and makes his way back. The quiet crunch of his footsteps, joining the layered hush of the sleeping camp. One tent, a soldier stirs from slumber, not from discomfort, but simply to shift his weight and draw the blanket closer. In another, a soft breath escapes a dreaming mouth. Someone murmurs in sleep, a name, perhaps, or a half-finished thought, then stills once more. Time, in this moment, feels slow, stretching outward like the stars themselves, drifting and dissolving into the folds of the night, and then softly, faintly, a pale light begins to brush the edges of the eastern sky. It is not sudden, it is not sharp, it begins as the faintest coolness in the air, the gentlest paling of the dark. A single star fades, then another. The silhouettes of the hills begin to take form again, less like shadows, more like whispers re-entering the world. Inside the tents, men remain sleeping, but the light continues. It creeps in quiet streaks across the tops of the canvas, softening the dark. The birds, first just one or two, begin to sing, tentative, uncertain, as if testing the edge of the day. Then, a trumpet sounds. Not a war call, not a rally, just the gentle signal of morning, drawn long and low, echoing like a breeze through the rows of sleeping tents. It does not startle, it does not command. It simply announces what is already unfolding. The return of the day. Movement begins slowly. A man rubs his eyes, stretching stiff limbs. Another rolls from his blanket, groaning softly at the cold that clings to the earth. They speak little. There is no rush, just the reassembly of routine. The fires are stoked once again. Water is drawn, bread is warmed. The clink of metal on clay returns, subdued and steady. A soldier pours olive oil into a shallow bowl, dipping bread and chewing absently. Another braids his leather belt with steady fingers, then wipes dust from his greaves. The camp reawakens not as a unit, but as a living thing. One limb at a time, one breath after another, and among them walks the centurion, slower than before, perhaps, but no less certain. His helmet is tucked under one arm. His gaze is not distant, but thoughtful. As he passes, the men nod, not out of duty, but out of recognition. They share the same fatigue, the same relief, the same silent gratitude for this day. Beyond the camp walls, the morning brightens, dew glistens on the grass beyond the training grounds. A pair of horses snort and shake out their manes, their tails swishing as stable hands approach with feed bags. Chickens pecked quietly in the dirt, oblivious to the quiet triumph of survival in the air. There will be no marching today, no drills, no sharpening, no inspections. Today is for washing tunics, tending wounds, mending sandals, and writing letters. For sitting in the sun with one's back against a barrel and letting the warmth soak into tired bones. For sleep, laughter, silence, whatever the body asks. By midday, the camp hums gently. Some lie beneath the shade of trees, arms folded behind their heads. Others gather near the well, sharing stories too simple to be worth writing down, but soothing just the same. The smith hammers at a bent buckle. A medic gathers fresh herbs. A young soldier carves something into a piece of wood, a face, a bird, perhaps the crest of his legion. And all the while, the sun climbs overhead, steady and soft, casting its golden net over a camp that, though weary, is whole. The eagle standard remains shrouded, standing watch, and slowly, imperceptibly, the day slides on. The Roman sun, at its zenith only hours ago, now begins its slow descent toward the western hills. Its light, no longer fierce and overhead, lengthens in golden ribbons that stretch between tents, across the sandy paths of the camp, and over the crests of worn helmets resting on wooden racks. The shadows, too, have changed, growing longer, cooler, and softer. They spill across the dirt like spilled ink, shifting with each passing moment. A breeze stirs again, gentler now, warm with the lingering heat of afternoon yet laced with the promise of evening's cool breath. The camp is quiet, not silent, never truly silent, but filled with the hum of low, peaceful activity. The kind of work that does not demand attention, but offers comfort through repetition. The kind of noise that blends into the landscape like a soft current beneath the surface of a calm river. A soldier kneels by his bedroll, carefully sewing a tear. In his tunic, his needle rises and falls in rhythm. Beside him, another soldier polishes his belt buckle with a strip of wool, the metal slowly emerging from beneath a film of dust, catching the sunlight like a wink. Nearby, an old veteran with silver at his temples is seated on an overturned crate. A small boy, perhaps the son of a nearby merchant, or one of the civilian workers who followed the legions, sits cross-legged at his feet. The veteran speaks softly, his hands carving slow shapes in the air as he tells a story too old to trace, but too familiar to forget. The boy watches with wide eyes, nodding, not out of understanding, but out of wonder. Behind them, the camp's cook stirs a large pot over a simmering fire. The scent of herbs, beans, and roasted grain drifts through the air. A soldier walks by, pauses, and takes in a deep breath with closed eyes. "Smells like home," he mutters, and the cook grins without turning. Further along the main avenue of tents, the bathers return from the river. Their sandals slap softly against the earth, tunics damp at the hem. Their faces are relaxed, freshly scrubbed and shaded pink by the sun. One of them hums a quiet tune, simple and without lyrics, and the others walk in step to the rhythm of it. In the smithy, the blacksmith wipes his brow with a cloth darkened by soot and sweat. The forge has cooled now. His tools rest in a neat row on the bench. Today he will not take new requests, only finish what remains from the morning's labors. A shield strap here, a rivet tightened there. His apprentice sits beside him, turning over a half-mended buckle and asking questions that receive patient, wordless answers. The day is winding down, and with it, the pace of life in the camp slows even further. The sun now dips ever lower behind the horizon, its light melting into a warm amber haze. The shadows it casts stretch out longer still, until they seem to blend into the very edges of the world, as if the camp itself has become cradled within the folds of dusk. A subtle chill begins to rise, whispering gently over the bare forearms of men sitting idly on crates and stumps, nudging them toward their cloaks. Within each tent, torches are lit. One by one, soft flames flicker to life, not harsh or glaring, but mellow, golden, like small hearths in a sea of canvas. The orange glow spills out into the paths between tents, where dust stirs gently in the breeze, catching the light like floating cinders. This illumination does not seek to chase away the night, only to soften its arrival. It is not the brightness of defiance, but the comfort of ritual, the welcome of another night safely kept. The camp has taken on a slower rhythm now. Tools are hung with care, swords slid back into scabbards, the day's work folded away like a tunic before bed. Soldiers speak more softly, as if their very words might ripple out into the growing stillness and disturb it. Some sit around small fires, bowls of lentils or barley porridge in hand, eating without hurry. A few laugh, gently and briefly, their mirth, like the fading notes of a lyre, pleasant, but quickly swallowed by the hush. At one fire, a centurion tells a quiet tale, one he has told before, and which will be told again. His voice is low and measured, his hands tracing slow arcs in the air. The men around him listen not for the story's ending, which they already know, but for the comfort of its telling. Like a lullaby heard in childhood, its familiarity is its gift. The story is not needed, only the moment of gathering, of warmth, of shared silence between sentences. Beyond the fires, the night deepens. The tents, arranged in perfect military lines, take on a ghostly aspect beneath the moonlight. Their pale fabric glows faintly, like lanterns without flames. Inside, some soldiers sleep already, wrapped in their cloaks with their shields nearby, helmets resting just within reach. Others lie awake, staring at the tent ceiling, the linen dimly backlit by the moon, tracing invisible patterns across the fabric, as if reading a forgotten script, written by the stars. Farther still, along the edges of the camp, sentries stand quietly. Their armor no longer gleams. It is now a dull silhouette against the starlit sky. They do not speak, only watch. Their footsteps are slow, measured, a rhythm that keeps the night in balance. One walks the length of the palisade wall, touching each post as he passes, not to inspect but simply to stay grounded, to feel the wood beneath his fingers. Solid and cool. The distant sounds of nature begin to return. The birds, long silent during the bustle of day, call softly from the trees. A nightjar trills once, then again. The leaves rustle as something small moves beneath them, a hedgehog, perhaps, or a lizard seeking warmth in the fading heat of the ground. These sounds are no longer drowned by hammers or marching feet. They reassert themselves gently, respectfully, like old neighbors returning after a visit. A short distance from the main camp, near the edge of a small grove of trees, a makeshift altar stands. It is modest, a flat stone with a handful of small offerings placed atop a sprig of laurel, a few copper coins, a pinch of flour. A young soldier kneels there alone. He is quiet, unmoving, his lips barely parting as he mouths a silent prayer. Not a plea for victory, not yet. Just a wish for sleep, for safety, for the familiar sunrise to return once more. Behind him, the camp is calm. A pair of legionaries sit polishing their sandals, not out of duty, but to pass the time. One ties and unties a knot, over and over, testing for strength, while the other watches a moth flutter lazily near the flame of a lantern. It circles, then retreats, then circles again, casting a large shadow on the tent wall, exaggerated and slow. Inside another tent, a soldier sharpens his blade, not for tomorrow, not out of fear, simply to feel the steel under his hand, to remember the weight of it. The whetstone slides across the edge in long, quiet strokes, like the gentle scraping of wind against stone. When he finishes, he wipes the blade and sets it beside his cot, then lies back, eyes open, staring upward, the silence pressing gently against his ears. All around, the camp breathes, a single vast organism, pulsing with slow, even life. A soldier murmurs in his sleep, another turns over, cloak rustling faintly. The fire near the cooking tent gives a final pop as a log splits. Sparks rise, orange against the blue-black sky, then vanish. Above it all, the heavens watch. The stars have thickened now, not scattered like points, but clustered into soft rivers of light. The Milky Way arches across the sky like the back of a sleeping beast. The moon, just past its peak, hangs quietly, its silver light spilling into the empty spaces left by firelight. Clouds drift slowly, barely perceptible, like breath upon a mirror. Time becomes meaningless in the camp. No bells, no clocks, no deadlines. Only the slow turning of the night, the gentle change of color and sound and scent. Sleep does not come in a rush, but seeps in like cool water through sand, soaking quietly into every tent, every blanket, every heart. Even the horses grow still, their stamping fades. They shift once, then settle, tails flicking occasionally, eyes half-lidded. Their breath rises in soft clouds. The corral is silent, save for a low, rhythmic snort. Not alert, not alarmed, just the last stirring before full rest. And in this quiet, the dreams begin. Some dream of home, of vineyards and warm kitchens, of voices they haven't heard in months. Others dream of fields they've never seen, of battles already fought, or of no battles at all. Some dream of walking beside rivers that do not exist, beneath trees that shimmer like bronze, in places where no orders are shouted and no armor is ever worn. The camp dreams with them. The commanders sleep, too. In their tents, maps rolled away, orders written. They lie still. A wax tablet rests beside one cot, half filled with notes, the stylus abandoned. A leather helmet hangs from a peg, its crest casting a long shadow across the canvas. Even the most seasoned among them feels it. This calm, this collective exhale before whatever comes next. The night stretches on. Stars wheel overhead. A comet, perhaps, trails faintly along the horizon, too distant to interpret, too fleeting to stir worry. Only the most alert sentry sees it, and he does not mention it to the next watch. Some things are meant to pass in silence. The fires burn lower now, reduced to ember and ash. Tents are still. Shields remain untouched. The air grows colder. The moon lowers slowly toward the hills. casting the last of its silver across the tents before dipping behind the horizon. Darkness deepens, thick and soft, like wool pulled over weary shoulders. Stillness settles into its final shape. The camp has become a cocoon of breath, warmth, and sleep. And tomorrow, the horns will sound. The sun will rise. The world will stir again, with footsteps, commands, and armor. But for now, in this moment, before the fight, they rest, and the world sleeps with them. And so, as the final threads of daylight fade into the soft hues of twilight, the Roman camp exhales. It is not a single breath, but a gentle, communal sigh drawn out over countless quiet acts, humble gestures, and slow-footed routines. The tents, once bustling with the stirrings of men and tools, now glow faintly from within, lit by flickering oil lamps that cast shadows like soft waves against the canvas walls. Inside, soldiers lie on their cots, their eyes not yet closed, but growing heavy. They speak little, if at all. Some whisper, their words slow and indistinct, the sentences trailing off like drifting smoke. Others lie in silence, staring upward, into the fabric above, their minds wandering far beyond the field, into memories of vineyards, of olive trees swaying on sunlit hills, of women's laughter, of children's muddy feet splashing in cold water. These thoughts rise and fall in the stillness, lulled by the distant crackle of a cooking fire, and the low murmur of voices softened by fatigue. Outside, the camp has quieted to its bones. The sentries walk their rounds with deliberate calm, their footfalls hushed in the dust. Their eyes sweep the darkened perimeter, not in fear, but in discipline, in routine. The torches at the corners burn low, their flames small but steady, curling upward like golden flowers in the night. Beyond them, the wild grasses rustle softly, whispering among themselves in the cool breeze that tumbles down from the hills. It carries with it the scent of lavender and dry earth, of distance and peace. The stars above begin to reveal themselves, one by one, not in a burst, but like careful guests arriving at a quiet gathering. First, the bright ones, then the subtler, more delicate lights. Then, finally, the entire sky unfolds like a great woven tapestry, pinned gently above the world. Unmoving, eternal, serene in the field, beyond the camp. The beasts are quiet. The horses have settled in the corral, their tails swaying gently in rhythm, heads low and half asleep. An ox snorts once, a puff of warm air rising into the cooling night, and then all is still again. Farther off, an owl releases a single note into the dark, a hollow sound that echoes across the hills like a message not meant for men. Somewhere, water trickles softly in a narrow stream, its movement constant, but never loud. It sounds like a lullaby in a language older than Rome itself. The trees, silent witnesses to the day's slow unfolding, stand tall and still, their branches swaying only slightly, as if in contemplation. Within the camp, the hearth fires burn low, casting amber rings across the packed earth. The last loaves of flatbread have been eaten. The final cups of watered wine have been sipped. The ladles rest in their basins. The bowls are rinsed and set aside, their interiors still faintly warm to the touch. The cook has hung his apron and stepped into his tent, where the faint creak of his cot is the only sign that he, too, has returned to rest. The smithy is quiet now, its anvil cool, its tools neatly lined and waiting. No hammer rings through the air tonight. No iron glows red in the coals. Just the scent of ash and leather and the echo of effort now finished. Elsewhere, a scribe finishes a final note, his stylus scratching lightly against the wax. He draws his final curve, seals the tablet, and closes his satchel. His candle, nearly spent, gutters and dies, and in the darkness that follows, he smiles to himself, not with triumph, but with that quiet satisfaction that comes only at the end of a long, clean day. He stretches, the joints of his fingers cracking softly, then pulls his cloak tight around him and leans back against the wooden post of his tent, watching the stars like a man watching his own thoughts float by. And still, the air grows cooler. The wind that brushes through the camp is no longer the wind of afternoon, nor even of twilight. It is the night wind, patient, easy, low. It moves through the open spaces like a hand, smoothing the folds of a blanket, passing over sleeping forms and empty tools alike. It lifts a corner of canvas here, rattles a loose buckle there, then continues on. The camp does not resist it. The camp does not stir. The camp welcomes it, as one welcomes a cool cloth to the brow after a long march under the sun. The men, too, are yielding to sleep now. One by one, a head tilts back, an arm falls slack. A slow, even breath is drawn and let go, and another. A man who moments ago was still awake, still thinking, is now dreaming of a hilltop from his childhood, or a song sung beside a fire long gone out. Another dreams of the sea, its great wide hush, its promise of far-off lands, and in his sleep, a smile tugs at the corner of his mouth. Another dreams of nothing at all, lost in the deep, blank silence, where no worry stirs, and no name needs remembering. The tents stand like small homes, each its own world, its own breath, its own quiet song, and together they form a harmony, a rhythm that pulses through the camp without effort or sound, a heartbeat of rest, a chorus of calm. Even the animals seem to join it, the gentle snort of a horse, the rustle of a sleeping dog, the murmur of the cattle huddled near one another for warmth. All things are still, but none are lifeless. All things are waiting but without fear, for tomorrow will come. The morning light will return, spilling once again across the canvas rooftops, waking the coals, stirring the bread to rise. The horns will sound, the soldiers will wake, dress, eat, and prepare. And the day, whatever it holds, will unfold as all days do, slowly, inevitably, fully. But tonight, there is no battle, no charge, no command shouted from the ridge. There is only the breath of peace, the warmth of rest, the weight of tired limbs lying still beneath woolen cloaks and flickering shadows. And above it all, the stars turn, unseen by many, yet known by all, ancient, unmoving, yet alive, turning slowly, patiently, across the dome of the world. And still, under those stars, the camp sleeps on. Time seems to slow further now, almost to a stop. The very edges of thought begin to dissolve, as if dipped in warm water. There are no sharp corners here, only the gentle curve of dreams, the soft fold of woolen blankets, the low hushed murmur of nighttime sounds. A soldier stirs once, in his sleep, mumbling some forgotten name, perhaps from a dream or a memory, and then settles again. A leather strap creaks gently on a shifting shield nearby, swaying ever so slightly in the night breeze. Even these small movements fold themselves into the stillness, not as interruptions, but as notes in a lullaby that the camp has been humming since dusk. Somewhere at the edge of the camp, near a thicket of brush and stone, a fox pauses in its movements, its ears perked, its breath steady and shallow. It has no fear of the men, no need to hurry. It watches for a moment the way animals do when they sense a world quiet enough to understand. Then, like a shadow, it slips between the tall grass and disappears, as soundless as mist. Even the creatures of the wild seem to respect the stillness that hangs here, wrapped around the camp like an old wool cloak. Nothing disturbs the balance. Far above, the moon emerges slowly from behind a cloud, its light cool and distant, silvering the tips of tent posts and the backs of sleeping shoulders. It casts no judgment, no warning, no promise. It simply watches, as it has done for ages, uncounted, drifting overhead as a pale and ancient witness to men at rest. It lights the edge of a discarded helmet, catching on the curve of bronze, gleaming for a moment, before fading again as the moon passes behind another shroud. This brief glint might have once spoken of valor, or battle, or triumph, but tonight it speaks only of silence. And in that silence, A subtle rhythm beats slow, ancient, and tender. The rhythm of men breathing in sleep, of wind combing through tall grass, of embers collapsing quietly in the ash. It is the rhythm of the world untouched by worry, of time not divided by duty or fear. A boyish-looking soldier, barely of age, lies curled in his cloak, one hand clutching the small wooden charm tied to his neck, a gift from a sister, or a mother, or perhaps no one at all. The charm rises and falls with his breathing. He does not stir. He has not moved in some time. And in this hour, he is not a soldier. He is not part of a formation, or a unit, or a name on a roster. He is only himself, soft, tired, dreaming, and the night does not ask him for more. A few tents down, an older man gray at the temples. A dozen winters carved into the corners of his face rests, with his hands folded across his chest. He has seen more campaigns than he cares to count. He knows the sound of spears and the rush of cavalry and the way a man cries out, not in pain, but in grief. Yet tonight, none of that matters. Tonight, he dreams not of past glories or future fears, but of a fig tree in bloom, of walking barefoot on warm soil, of hearing the soft laughter of someone long gone, whose face remains only in the soft edges of memory. And this dream, too, is part of the camp, now folded into the fabric of tents and smoke and shadow. The guards at the watchposts shift slowly, quietly. They move not with alarm, but with a sacred kind of attention. Their task is not to anticipate attack, but to protect the peace that blankets the camp like a second sky. Each footfall is measured, each glance steady. One leans against his spear and tilts his head back to look at the stars, not counting hours, but simply watching. He does not wish the time away. He only exists in it, calm, slow, present. The camp does not need to be defended now, it needs only to be preserved in this perfect stillness, held together by the gentleness of routine and the hush of the wind. From a distance, the camp glows faintly, a constellation of dim lanterns and smoldering fires. To an observer on the ridge, it might seem like a village of ghosts, or a painting on parchment, its life suspended, its breath barely stirring. But within, the truth is warmer, richer. It is a place of deep human presence, of worn hands resting, of limbs stretched out in ease, of hearts beating slowly in the dark. There is no urgency here, no march, no command, just the long healing silence of men who have given all they could to the day, and now have nothing more to give but their surrender to sleep. And sleep they do, not all at once, not in perfect unison, but like falling leaves, each drifting down at its own pace, each finding its place in the soft earth of dreams. The camp welcomes each one, folds around each sleeper, offering warmth and shelter, and the sound of the wind moving softly through the grass. No one is left out. No one is untouched by the hush. Even those who wake once or twice, who blink up at the night sky, or roll onto their side, find themselves pulled back into rest, into the fold, into the song of the camp at peace. And still, the stars turn, steady, endless, gentle. The hills remain dark and distant, the trees still and reverent. The stream nearby continues to whisper its secret language, flowing onward, as it always has, as it always will. Somewhere, a branch creaks. Somewhere else, a dream deepens. A feather falls from a bird overhead and is caught by the night wind, drifting silently between tents before coming to rest near the fire pit, unseen by all. And yet, its descent feels sacred, like the final note in a song that began long before the camp was built. And in this moment, this deep, unbroken, infinite moment, the camp becomes something more than a collection of men and tools and cloth. It becomes a prayer of rest, a sanctuary of weariness and warmth, a temple made of shadow and breath, where the only God is silence, and the only offering is sleep. And sleep comes to all, as the final glow of twilight fades behind the distant hills, the the world of the medieval village begins its gentle descent into night. The air, cool and crisp, carries with it the faint scent of damp earth and wood smoke, settling softly over thatched roofs and winding lanes. The open sky above, a vast canvas of deep indigo sprinkled with silver stars, stretches endlessly, inviting weary bodies to rest beneath its quiet watch. In these simple homes, made of timber and stone, the rhythm of daily life pulses in harmony with the turning of the seasons and the cycles of the moon. The people within, from farmers to craftsmen, nobles to servants, prepare slowly for the long hours of darkness, a time when the world holds its breath and the mind drifts toward dreams. Inside a humble cottage, a wooden bedstead creaks under. A thick pile of straw, covered with homespun blankets, dyed with gentle hues of ochre and deep brown. The hearth's dying embers glow faintly, casting flickering shadows on the rough-hewn walls where dried herbs hang in small bundles. The scent of lavender and rosemary lingers, used not only for comfort, but also believed to ward off restless spirits and bad dreams. The housewife draws a woolen cloak around her shoulders, stepping softly to avoid waking the youngest child, nestled close beneath the covers. Outside, a gentle wind whispers through the trees, carrying with it the muted calls of nocturnal birds and the distant lowing of cattle settling in their pens. The village lies quiet, save for the occasional crackle from the hearth and the soft murmur of whispered prayers. Sleep in this world is not a luxury, but a vital necessity. It marks a pause in the endless toil, a moment of reprieve where bodies mend and spirits find solace. Yet, it is often punctuated by the demands of the time. A watchful eye for the household fire, the need to rise early for the day's labors, or the presence of guests seeking shelter and rest. In larger homes, the noble lord and his family prepare for slumber in chambers adorned with heavy tapestries that shield against the chill and draught. Rich fabrics of velvet and embroidered linen surround the bed, while flickering candlelight dances upon the polished wooden beams. Here, servants extinguish torches and lay out nightwear, garments often layered to provide warmth in the stone-cold rooms. The ritual of preparation for sleep includes simple acts, washing the hands and face with cool water from a basin, offering a quiet prayer to saints for protection through the night, and sometimes sharing a final meal of bread and cheese, or a small cup of ale to ease the body's weariness. As eyes grow heavy and breathing slows, the mind drifts through a landscape shaped by the day's memories and the tales whispered by firelight. Dreams may be seen as messages, omens, or simply the wandering of the soul, and in the medieval imagination, they hold a mysterious power. Outside, the moon rises slowly, casting a pale glow across fields and forests. The silence deepens, broken only by the distant hoot of an owl or the rustle of leaves in the night breeze. Stars shimmer faintly, like tiny lanterns guiding travelers and guarding sleepers alike. The darkness wraps the village in its embrace, a gentle cloak that invites rest. The ancient rhythm of night and day continues unbroken, as it has for centuries, offering a quiet promise. With dawn comes new light, new labor, and the chance to live again. As the night deepens, the village settles into a calm rhythm. The narrow streets, once bustling with the sounds of daily life, are now hushed beneath the blanket of darkness. Only the occasional bark of a dog, or the faint murmur of a traveler's footsteps, breaks the stillness. The thatched roofs, heavy with dew, shimmer faintly beneath the silver light of the moon, while shadows pool in the corners of alleys and beneath gnarled branches. Within each home, the lives of its occupants soften, as bodies and minds surrender to rest. The low murmur of whispered prayers lingers in the air, a tender plea for safety through the hours of darkness. Many in the village believe that the night is a fragile time when spirits roam, and so small charms and amulets are placed near the bedsprigs of herbs, carved wooden talismans, or blessed crosses to guard the sleeper from harm. The beds themselves tell their own story. for peasants and serfs. The sleeping place is humble. A simple wooden frame stuffed with straw or rushes gathered from the nearby riverbank. The mattress is often a bundle of dried hay, scented faintly with wildflowers or crushed herbs to mask the musty smell and encourage restful sleep. Blankets woven from wool, sometimes patched and worn, provide warmth against the chill of the night. The cold can seep in through cracks in the walls or through open windows, making layers of cloth and careful positioning near the hearth essential for comfort in wealthier homes. The bed is a centerpiece of the chamber, massive oak posts carved with intricate designs, draped with heavy curtains that can be drawn to shield from drafts and prying eyes alike. The mattress is stuffed with feathers or softer straw, covered with fine linens embroidered with the family crest or religious symbols. Furs and thick quilts are piled atop to ensure a cozy rest during the cold months, and pillows stuffed with down offer a gentle cradle for the head. The sounds of the night seep through the walls and windows, the rhythmic croak of frogs from nearby ponds, the rustle of leaves stirred by a soft wind, the distant call of a nightingale. These natural noises mingle with the subtle creaks and sighs of the wooden houses as they settle, creating a lullaby unique to this ancient time. Sleep itself is understood differently than today. The medieval mind often sees sleep as divided into phases. A first sleep, a period of waking or light activity, then a second sleep before dawn. This waking interval, sometimes called the watch, might be used for prayer, quiet conversation, or tending to a sick family member. It is a sacred liminal time, bridging the realms of consciousness and dreams. In the countryside, where the seasons dictate much of life's rhythm, people rise early with the first light. Before dawn, the village stirs quietly, as some slip from their beds to tend fires, fetch water, or begin chores. The air is still cool and crisp, and the sky transitions from deep black to soft gradients of blue and pink. The scent of fresh dew mingles with wood smoke, signaling the day's slow awakening. Inside the homes, fires are rekindled, and the aroma of porridge or bread baking soon fills the rooms.